waste no time. Let's get into this right now. This will be a pros and cons approach. Kicking it off. Pros. Number one, I like the acting in this movie for the most part. I like Dave Farage, who played young Michael Myers. I thought he did a good job at balancing out the sadistic side of Michael and a more innocent side of Michael. I like the scenes where he's almost playing like a split personality, but maybe deep down he's just really trying to trick these people into believing that he does have a split personality and that he doesn't remember these killings. I like that little that little subtlety going on there. It kind of made the young Michael have a little more complexity to him, and it gave him a little bit more of a charisma, which I was enjoying a lot. I like Malcolm McDowell as the new Dr. Loomis. Malcolm McDowell is no Donald Pleasance, but I think he did a really good job at creating a different version of Dr. Loomis. In real life, if a doctor was handling a case where a 10-year-old boy committed heinous murders, they will write a book on it to cash in, and that's exactly what Dr. Loomis did in this film. He wrote a book and cashed in on those murders. However, at the same time, when he learns of Michael's escape from the sanitarium, he was proactive and genuinely wanted to help stop Michael, bring him back to the sanitarium or kill him, because he knows just how dangerous Michael really is. I still liked how Malcolm McDowell still managed to make Dr. Loomis very, very likable. I also really enjoyed the scenes that he had with young Michael Myers, that building friendship between the two. It worked for me. There's also this nice little tender scene where Michael is just having an episode and Dr. Loomis comforts him. It's a very well done scene, which is really good at showing Michael's vulnerability without going too overboard with him, making Michael, in my opinion, and for lack of a better word, feel like a little bitch. Like Halloween H2O, this movie made a vulnerable Michael work, which I am never against. I like it, and since this is a more realistic take on the Halloween franchise, I think it suited what Rob Zombie was trying to say. I was all for it. Sheriff Brackett, as played by the awesome Brad Dourif, was fantastic in this movie. I love the scenes between Sheriff Brackett and Dr. Loomis. Just seeing two old pros like Dourif and Malcolm McDowell act off each other is always a positive to me, and their scenes, I just chew them all up. I love their chemistry, and I love seeing them act off one another. Those scenes are highlights for me. Scout Taylor Compton as the new Laurie Strode. I like how she was able to mix up the old Laurie Strode, but put a more modern twist on it, making her more spunky, more lively, more like a modern-day teenager. I liked it, and it worked for me. Danielle Harris returns to the Halloween playing Annie Brackett, and I thought she was great as Annie Brackett. And of course, having Danielle Harris and Michael Myers share a scene together, it's just the icing on the cake for me. The actress who played Linda did a nice little recreation of her. I thought that was well handled. Tyler Mane as older Michael Myers was awesome. Tyler Mane to me is a very underrated actor. He conveyed so much emotion with just his eyes and body language. Being that his face is constantly covered up by the mask, all you see is his eyes, and you see the emotion in his eyes, the intensity in his eyes. It worked for me. I liked it a lot. I also like the look of the mask, how it has a more grittier, torn up look. I loved it. It gave the mask more personality to me. And I also like the way Tyler Mane would kill his victims. It felt more real, it felt more raw, it felt more brutal. And that's just because Tyler Mane is just a gigantic man, just a very, very, very gigantic man in life. But as Michael Myers, he brought his intensity, and it, to me, reflected perfectly on screen. One of the better Michael Myers, in my opinion, in terms of an acting standpoint. And of course, I also like a little cameo by Ken Foree as Big Joe Grizzly, bitch. And I also like the little fight that they have in a bathroom truck stop. It was a fun little scene, and it shows how Michael got his overalls. I'm okay with that. Anytime I see Ken Foree in a horror movie, it's always a plus in my book. And of course, like I had mentioned, some of the direction and writing in the first half of this movie, particularly with scenes of young Michael and Dr. Loomis, and later on when you have Dr. Loomis and Brad Dourif, to me, those are the best written and best directed scenes of this film. So yes, the pros of this movie, to me, make this thing work. Now we get to the cons to me, where I feel that this movie kind of falls off the rails a little bit. And again, we have to go back to the writing and the direction. While I praise the writing, I'm also going to give the writing some criticism. Rob Zombie has this tendency to always create these white, trashy, redneck, despicable, vulgar people. And for me, in a Halloween movie, that doesn't work. It doesn't work for me at all. The vulgarity is very over the top. And it just makes this movie just feel weird when you watch that first half, and when you watch it through, like in the second half, he tones down the vulgarity, but in the first half, it's just overblown. You have scenes where, Mrs. Myers, his boyfriend, is, making sexual remarks about her daughter, and then you have scenes where these kids are bullying Michael, and they're making sexual remarks about his mother and his sister, and to me, that vulgarity in a Halloween movie, it just doesn't work, and just just adds a dirtiness to it. I don't like it at all. And again, the whole zombieism of white trash rednecks, this takes place in Haddonfield, Illinois, suburban America. Rob Zombie, I don't know where you grew up, but not every place has white trash rednecks. Lay off that trope already. You hang on to that like it's some kind of security blanket. It doesn't work for every single movie you make. It doesn't. And shoehorning that kind of family in a Halloween movie makes it work even less. Especially since Haddonfield is a suburban community where pretty much everyone knows everyone. And you have this white trash redneck trailer park family that sticks out like a sore thumb. It does not work for me at all. I wish he would just lay off that trope already. It's just nauseating to watch his movies. Because for the most part, those characters are the most over-the-top, most hammy, and just most useless characters. Sure, some of the dialogue that the boyfriend says, to me at least, is pretty funny. Again, if there's a different movie, I would think it's funny. But in a Halloween movie, I think it's unnecessary, and it doesn't fit the tone of the overall Halloween franchise in general, in my opinion. Another thing I don't like is the hastily recreated scenes of the original Halloween movie. These scenes in the first movie, they had suspense and they had build-up. And this one is just beat, 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 beat. They happen, and then you move on. There's no build-up to it. There's no time to breathe. The first half of this movie took its time to develop young Michael Myers and Dr. Loomis. That when you get to the second half of this movie, it just goes at a breakneck pace, and you've got no chance and no time to grow to care about these characters, with maybe the exception of Laurie and Sheriff Brackett and maybe Annie. But for the rest, they just show up and they go down. Again, and that's just a problem I have in horror movies in general, where they just throw characters in your face and then they just take them away from you without giving you a reason to want to care about them. It's something that needs to be better handled. Another thing I don't like is Rob Zombie's directing. In some scenes, I think he's good. In other scenes, the whole handheld shaky cam, I'm not a fan of it. And him just going from scene to scene to scene with no build-up and no suspense. Again, I have a major issue with that. It's a Halloween movie. You gotta slow it down. You gotta have a more even pace. You can't have your pace go off the rails because you want to get to the next brutal kill scene. You gotta take your time and build up to that. To me, that's a big flaw in Rob Zombie's directing. He does not give his scenes any chances to breathe. And another strike I got against Rob, again, goes back to his writing. I always said that Rob Zombie needs to have script polish. He needs to have people polish his scripts, because as a writer, he has good ideas, but those ideas get mangled when he goes into that redneck territory, into those brutal kill territory, into the vulgarity of it. He needs to tone that down in order for him to create more watchable and enjoyable movies. To me, he's not there. He desperately needs moderation in terms of his writing for his movies to work, in my view, of course. Another issue I got with this movie is that this movie has a rape scene, and I don't like it. It feels very out of place, and it's very unnecessary. And that's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to shed no more light on it. It's a scene that has no business being in this movie. And like I said, while I do like Michael Myers and the kills can be a little too brutal and too bloody. And I think, and again, it's a Halloween movie. You need to tone that down. You need to scale it down. You need to take more from like the first two Halloweens and Halloween 4. Halloweens 2 and 4 had brutal kills, but they were tasteful. They weren't in-your-face brutality. I think Rob cannot distinguish a Halloween movie from a typical Splatterfist movie. He needed to, in my view, toy with that a little more and make it and have more of a perfect blend, like I feel it was done in Halloweens 2 and 4 when it came to graphic violence. So, when all is said and done, I do still enjoy this film a lot. I think it's one of the better remakes to have been done, and since it is the 10-year anniversary of this movie, I think it still holds up for the most part, which is why I'm giving it a solid 7 out of 10. The pros outweigh the cons. If you were to fix up those cons a little bit, like I had said, this could have been a perfect remake, but instead, it's just a solid, well-done remake. Those are my thoughts on Rob Zombie's Halloween remake of 2007. I am AJ Legend. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll check you back next time for more.